Hello and welcome to episode 351 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and you might notice a revisited there at the end of this episode title because we are talking about Mass Effect, and yes, we did 2 episodes on Mass Effect 1 in 2018, but we're bringing it back for a very special Mass Effect month of Retro Encounter. But who's joining me and Commander Shepard on this journey in this year, 2022? It is Jono Logan.
Hello, everyone.
And Wes Iliff.
Hey, everybody.
Jono and Wes, I guess I revealed my hand early, but we're talking about Mass Effect. This is going to be an entire month of Mass Effect where we do Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 in individual episodes through the month of November. N7 is officially Mass Effect Day, so we're making November officially month of Mass Effect here on Retro Encounter. I'm excited to play these because I played the entire trilogy in the early 2010s, and it has been right around a decade since I've played them. So I am excited, but I understand that both of you have different levels of Mass Effect experience. So let's talk about that a little bit, starting with you, Jono.
Yeah, my experience with Mass Effect was I had never played it. I completely missed it. I completely missed every BioWare RPG except for KOTOR. Which, I mean, we've talked about KOTOR a lot in the past, and I loved KOTOR. I thought it was a great game. I thought it was super fun, but I just missed Mass Effect. So this seemed like a really good reason to dive in and really play the entire series. Of course, because of that, I ended up playing the Legendary Edition, so I just missed the original. So there might be a few little differences between my experience and the experience that you and Wes had back in the day, but I think I got the gist.
Yeah, and my experience was not I don't know if not ideal is the term, but a little bit awkward in the day as well. I played the first one on my college laptop in 2010, and because I didn't have an Xbox 360, and it didn't have a PS3 version. And then when I had to try to transfer my info over to Mass Effect 2 because I played that on the PS3. I had to play this short I think they called it a vid comic, or basically an interactive comic book where you made 6 key decisions from Mass Effect 1 and they carried over to the PS3 version of Mass Effect 2, but there was a couple things that couldn't carry over properly, like punching the reporter. You couldn't do that consistently, and I think Kirrahe always dies in the vid comic version of Mass Effect 1 transferring to PS3. But now I'm also playing on the Legendary Edition, which again came out in 2021. It makes Mass Effect more accessible to players than ever. And now I'm going to try and, make this theme a continuous through line experience to the best of my ability. But so I've been playing Mass Effect for around 10 or 11 years. Wes, what's your background and experience with Mass Effect?
So I entered the BioWare world with Knights of the Old Republic, and from there I played every BioWare game and BioWare sequel done by Obsidian that came my way. So I played this pretty close to launch. It was the reason that I got a 360 as a gift from my wife years and years back. So I played it from the get-go. Didn't play any of the DLC until this Legendary Edition came out, for the first game at least. But since then I've beaten it. Like, this is time number 4 or 5.
So you probably made quite a few different choices throughout it.
Oh yeah, I've seen almost every angle that there is to see. But I was like, well, let's alternate between male and female Shepard, and let's see what these combination of things does and leads to in the third game, which is kind of a blast. So I will never stop playing these games. That's
another thing that the Legendary Edition did, is they brought the female Shepard model in line with the one that was in Mass Effect 3. So it actually is, FemShep looks the same in every game now.
Yeah, and it's much better.
Yeah.
There were improvements made to character models between 2007 and 2012. That's for sure. And both of you mentioned KOTOR. I was not into BioWare in the 2000s. I think my first BioWare game, other than messing around on a friend's copy of Baldur's Gate 2 a long time ago, I think was Dragon Age Origins. I played that when I got not long after I got a PS3 in 2009, so probably 2010. Some of my friends who were super into BioWare insisted that I play Mass Effect because it was already out and about at that time. And when so I played Mass Effect and Jade Empire on my old laptop, and then when I got a nice beefier desktop later, I used that to play things like Baldur's Gate 2 Remastered. But I did most of my BioWare playing on the PlayStation 3 and 4, and that's how I played through all of the Dragon Age games and Mass Effect 2 and 3. I attempted to play Mass Effect Andromeda, but there's a problem downloading that with the download file for that, and I think that might have been my PlayStation trying to rescue me from Mass Effect Andromeda.
It's decent
Not
shit.
yeah, not exactly sure. And it is a recurring problem too. I've checked forums and other places. There is issues downloading Mass Effect legal copies of Mass Effect Andromeda.
I just finished it, and guess that's the one we're not covering. I'll just say I actually really enjoyed it. It wasn't as good as the first 3 games, but it had some interesting things that it was doing.
If I get that copy working, I'm not against trying it. But for now, Mass Effect Andromeda is definitely a separate thing that we will not be addressing on the show. But we are going to talk about all 3 Mass Effect games over this month. And to give listeners, if you're listening to this, you probably already know most of this. But Mass Effect was a trilogy of games from 2007 to 2012 done by BioWare. When they were perhaps at the peak of their powers, a pretty large or a Canadian developer based in I think Edmonton, and they started out as a smallish studio, but as they got more and more popular and got bigger and bigger budgets, they grew quite rapidly. But then they were acquired by EA in I think 2012 or 2013, and fans have, let's say, noticed a decline after that. Dragon Age Inquisition was a very good game. I think that was 2014 or so. But their recent games, such as Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda, have not been received well. And you know how fans are online. A lot of people clamor and lament the old BioWare. But we know we don't need to do that on this podcast. We are going to celebrate the Mass Effect trilogy because when Mass Effect was hot, it was the coolest thing in the world. Like Mass Effect had it's a sci-fi RPG styled as a third person or first person shooter, depending on your settings, I guess. And we mentioned KOTOR already a couple times. When I played KOTOR for the first time earlier this year, already knowing and loving Mass Effect, I really felt the Mass Effect DNA here. Like KOTOR was BioWare's opportunity to make a great Star Wars game, and Mass Effect was their opportunity to take everything they learned from KOTOR and their other RPGs and create their own sci-fi world. Because Mass Effect it's beautiful in a way. It's optimistic like Star Trek. It has hundreds of alien races and centuries of history like a Star Wars or a Star Trek. And it is, I think, one of the most comprehensive and interesting video game sort of accomplishments of world building. And Mass Effect 1, a lot of Mass Effect 1 is sort of just introducing that world to the player. But even in doing so, I think it's fun just walking around the Citadel, the big shared space station that most of the aliens use, and learning about it. So, Jono, I mean, you've recently played through 4 Mass Effect games, which is more than I've played technically. And I know that you're a big fan of Star Trek and other sci-fi universes. What was your reaction to just experiencing the world of Mass Effect for the first time?
My first reaction was, well, this is clearly a sequel to KOTOR. Like it felt very much like BioWare's attempt at a sequel to KOTOR, except they didn't have the IP of Star Wars, so they developed their own. And thankfully, the folks at BioWare, especially back then, were, like you said, top of their game, and they created a remarkably textured universe with alien species that I would argue are as fleshed out as any in Star Wars, at least not if you include the extended universe. But like the alien races in this are very different. They have their own personalities, but individuals of those species are also. It's really difficult to pull off that level of specificity with alien races to make them genuinely feel alien while at the same time allowing you to relate to them. Star Trek does it sometimes. Sometimes they do it successfully. Sometimes they fail miserably. But I feel like Mass Effect really sticks the landing in that sense. And I mean, you're right. It's very much a combination of Star Wars space opera mixed with the utopian future of Star Trek. Those two things really kind of combine. And what I really like about the first game, especially, is humanity is not on top. They are not like the leaders. Like if it's Star Trek, Starfleet Academy is on Earth and the Federation is based on Earth. That's not the case here. You're the new kids on the block. You're really trying to get respect. You're trying to get, the attention of races who are much more experienced and have higher levels of technology than humanity. And I like that because it positions you and, humanity as the underdogs in the story. And that's a really, really interesting place to come from. But like, I mean, you can really see the KOTOR DNA. Like, yeah, Spectres, Spectre training, Spectre, like it's Jedi. That's the idea. The alignment of light and dark is emulated with the Paragon and Renegade emotion, or what are they called? Yeah,
morality system.
Yeah, the morality system. Like it's really parallel. So this is a sequel to all of the systems of KOTOR, and they just developed their own world. And I loved it. I just loved it. I loved it more than KOTOR, and I really like KOTOR.
BioWare has been dealing in morality systems in RPGs for decades, and the Paragon Renegade system in Mass Effect is binary. I mean, a lot of the time it's like, do you pick the red option or the blue option? But it's much it is somewhat, let's see, nuanced is the wrong term, but it's not the same as light side, dark side in KOTOR, where the choices sometimes range from sensibly good to preposterously bad. In Mass Effect, you're always trying to accomplish the same thing. Like, your mission objective doesn't meaningfully change, and the ending of the game doesn't meaningfully change. If you go Paragon or Renegade, like you still defeat Sovereign and are sort of the hero of humanity at the end, no matter what you did. But it's more about the methods and the tone of how you do it. In a Paragon Shepherd is in general trying to do good and trying to accomplish things in the spirit of cooperation, while a Renegade Shepherd has no problem at all killing a few people to or even innocent people to accomplish their mission, and is somewhat racist in favor of humans and against aliens in their attitude. And I'm trying to use gender neutral pronouns here, because Shepard is a player designed character, and who can present either as male or female, and in particular, I think that fans in general have accepted that the female Shepard is the better voice performance, because
pretty accurate.
I mean everyone loves Fem Shep. It's what's her name? She's
Jennifer Hale.
Yeah, Jennifer Hale. That's it. She's done a ton of stuff. Jennifer Hale does an absolutely fabulous job with the role. And I am rolling a female Renegade Shepherd this time around, and I've mentioned this in other episodes. When I play games with morality systems, I usually go Paragon, or like 80% good guy my first time around, because that's how I feel most of the time, how I want to play. I like being a hero in video games. But because I've played Mass Effect before, and I never finished a Renegade run of Mass Effect 2 or 3, I'm gonna be a truly heinous bitch this entire run. And I made some decisions that I would normally never make in a game like this if left to my own devices. So Wes, I'm gonna give you like 3 questions at once, and I apologize. First of all, tell me 1 or 2 things that you love about the world of Mass Effect, and that that Jono recently experienced for the first time. And also, how did you build your Shepherd?
The world really stands out to me just because the different alien races are simultaneously very human and very inhuman. Some of them feel so drastically different, but underneath at that core, you still have characters that you can relate to and understand, even if they're like a Hanar or an Elcor who experience the world drastically differently than we do. Which has always been kind of that core holding everything together, is that I've got this wonderful cast of really relatable people, especially in Mass Effect 1. A lot of them start out seeming like, I don't want to use the term D-bags, but I can't think of a better one right now. They are not friendly folks, for the most part.
They are difficult.
They're a difficult crew. But by the end of the game, you really do feel like this is a crew that you've bonded with, and that you understand how they work, and when you have conversations with them, you know the ways that they want to be treated, and they might be different from person to person. It's not all just be nice all the time, be mean all the time. If you try to be too nice to Rex, he's not going to appreciate it very much.
Rex is the kind of person where like you get into a fight and then become friends.
Exactly.
But if you try to make friends straight away, you will probably get into a fight.
Yeah, that's dead on.
Rex needs to respect you.
Yes, and it's interesting because he's probably one of the more friendly Krogan around, and that's still not saying a whole lot. But there is room within those different species for differentiation. Humans don't have a monopoly on having diversity, which is not always the way it goes in sci-fi stories. or fantasy stories, or really any stories. Um, but that said, I'm kind of the same as you, Sollosi. I always go with heroic. I don't want to do things that make me feel bad, and it makes me feel bad to be mean to people. Now, that said, I've beaten this game a lot of times, most of them with a Paragon female shepherd. So I went with a male this time around. I actually tried a couple of go-rounds. I decided I was going to do Renegade no matter what. But I tried to make some shepherds of other ethnicities, and every time I did, and I fired it up, and their voices started coming out, it felt so terribly wrong. They have some of the whitest sounding voices in here, like not to degrade the the acting that they're doing, but if you try to make any other ethnicity of shepherd and you hear those voices coming out, there's such a difficulty listening to it. So instead I went with a meathead shepherd, and I wasn't sure if it was going to work out yet, and I was tired of coming up with good new names. So his name is Borpo Shepherd. He's got a bright red mohawk and a biker mustache, and he's got like the thickest neck settings possible. And he's just an absolute jerk. He's just like a meat-headed jerk. And I've never played a character that way before, so it's kind of entertaining.
This is not how I went this time around, but my very first Shepherd I'm still very attached to. I think I had just watched the second Addams Family movie when I started before starting it. Not for the first time, but like I had recently seen that movie, so I made a Shepherd named Carlos Shepherd, who resembled Gomez Addams, or Raul Julia Gomez Addams.
Oh, that's
and
beautiful.
it cracked me up for 20 straight months or however long I played those. But I mentioned I'm going with a female renegade shepherd this time, and I'm talking about the diversity of your crew. They really, I think to a degree, the crew, the main characters in this game, other than Shepard, Rex, Tali, Liara, Garrus, Caden, Ashley, they come into their own a little bit more in later games, because Tali and Rex, to me, feel almost more like introductions to what Quarians and Krogans are than characters in their own right. And they are characters in their own right, but a lot of their dialogue is explaining their culture to you. Because Mass Effect this was the era of over detailed video game in-game codexes. Any information that you find can become a codex entry that you can read through a menu like an encyclopedia article all about the lore of Mass Effect. Like this game is, there's a lot of plot and it's good, but there's even more lore and it can be pretty great. But a lot of it is backloaded into a codex. So a lot of there's a lot of expository dialogue between you and your alien crewmates learning about alien cultures of this world, and it's mostly appreciated. But as a result, I feel like the Liara of Mass Effect 2 is different from the Liara of Mass Effect 1 in a lot of good ways, I think. And a lot of that is because Liara is doing things besides explaining Prothean architecture to you. And Liara, Garrus, and Tali, I think, are sort of like maybe the three signature alien crew members, and they all are toned very differently in later Mass Effect games for the better. But this crew, Jono, did you have a favorite crew member of the main six in Mass Effect 1?
Yeah, I love Tali. I'm a big fan of Tali. I'm a big fan of, like, we're not talking about we're talking about the future games, but when I found out that I couldn't romance Tali in future games, I was like, oh no, because I'm playing a female.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm playing a female Tarragon, and Tally's straight, so won't work. So I just get to be like jealous of Garrus. Yeah, I love Tali. I love the voice acting. I love the accent. She feels genuinely alien. At the same time, she's adorable. She's very young. That really comes across, and I like how she develops from the beginning when you first meet her to the end. She's just a really interesting character to me, and the society that she comes from, because we don't see it in this game, we just hear about it. There's a lot of mystery there, and I really am intrigued by that. I just think Tally's awesome. She was also a permanent member of my team when I was out in the field.
I didn't use Tali very much in this game because I rolled an infiltrator shepherd. And listeners, there that you choose one of 6 classes at the beginning of the game, and each of your 6 crew members are an approximation of one of the 6 shepherd classes. But because and also like the 3 sort of theaters of action in this game are tech skills, biotic skills, and firearm skills. And Tali is really good at tech, and the infiltrator class is like a mix of sniper rifles and tech skills. So I didn't use Tali or Caden much because because there was some overlap of the of sort of like tech skills. Wes, how did you roll your shepherd this time around?
I went going with the pure meathead route. I went full soldier, and then I had
Got it.
Garrus and Liara backing me up to cover my tech and biotic needs.
I used probably Rex the most as a teammate. And other than him, probably Ashley or Liara, because Ashley for more firepower, Liara for more biotics. And biotic, I forgot how wacky biotics get in Mass Effect 1.
Just
Yes.
a bit.
in Mass Effect 2 and 3, like biotics are this is for the listeners, not you guys. I know you already know this. Biotics are an approximation of psychic powers and or reality warping powers, and they do a lot of fun stuff in the later games. Like you can pick up items and throw them, or zap enemies with force fields, or destroy their shields by warping space around them. There are cool biotic skills, but Mass Effect 2 and 3, there's a lot of like trying to break down enemy shields to with a like play the rock paper scissors game of hit enemies with the right weak point before they're exposed to biotic or tech damage. But in Mass Effect 1, it is the wild west, because you can throw biotics at anything as long as your mastery level is high enough. So you can take the final boss or a giant desert juggernaut and fling them around like your Emperor Palpatine or something. It is goofy how crazy the biotics get in this game. So it's like it's fun being a biotic shepherd, but also it's nice to just keep Liara around so she can like make it rain psychic waves everywhere.
Mhm.
I did a lot of, hey Liara, you throw them around while I snipe every enemy one by one. There was a lot of that in this playthrough for me. But Jono, this is your first time playing it. Did you like do a lot of research before choosing a class, and what class did you end up choosing?
I ended up actually choosing Infiltrator 2. It wasn't too much more difficult with Tally in my team, because I was pretty much a pure infiltrator, and my team was usually Tally and Liara. So I was tech heavy, but it worked. It worked for me. And you're right, it is a lot of fun to snipe when they are unable to do anything.
The Vanguard class, which is like shotguns and biotics, in Mass Effect 2, they have a move called Charge, where you give yourself a biotic force field and just zoom at the enemy. And one thing you can do in that game is break down the enemy shields with whatever tech or firearm skill you want. Then do a biotic lift so they're floating in the air, and then do a biotic charge at them. So you smack into them like a bowling ball, and they go flying into a wall where you can then shotgun them. I'm not sure there's anything more satisfying in that game than Vanguard biotic combos. But this is the kind of shenanigans you can get into in Mass Effect, and which is otherwise if you play soldier strictly, it can be a slightly boring third person shooter. But they give you enough tricks and enough skills and enough sci-fi flavor that it's definitely more than that.
Yeah, and you can use in this game, you can use your allies' skills, so that gives you an extra little bit of choice to play with in fights.
Yeah, team building and pretty good ally AI and calling your allies for specific skills are all possible this time around. I think it wasn't quite this refined in the old 07 PC version I played. Like
That's correct.
They've made improvements to ally help in this version of Mass Effect 1 that I think that were probably pulled in from 2 or 3 if memory serves.
Yeah, the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect 1 is by far the most changed from the original, and it's all to give it a little bit more parity, make it a little bit more playable by modern audiences, and I think it does a pretty good job. It's still an older style RPG, but I think it works.
Yeah, I had an absolute blast replaying this. This is going to be a very effusive podcast. But let's get into the actual story a little bit. Shepard is I think a lieutenant commander on a ship called the Normandy, which is captained by is it Keith Anderson or just Anderson? I'm confusing Keith David with
Keith David. Yeah, it's Admiral Anderson.
It's David Anderson. It's Captain David Anderson, which I'm confusing with his voice actor Keith David, which is very reasonable. But maybe if I call him Keith Anderson by accident again, you know exactly why now.
But, it's justifiable.
Admiral Goliath.
Yeah. And the creator of Gargoyles is the producer of Young Justice now, and he brought in Keith David for 2 episodes of Young Justice.
Greg Weisman. Weisman he's the best. I mean, he created the best Spider-Man cartoon.
Yeah, he did. He did the best Marvel cartoon and the best DC cartoon of the past 20 years, and he did Gargoyles in the 90s. Why doesn't he have millions of dollars for every show? I don't know. But anyway, shout out Greg Weisman. But back to Mass Effect. You choose a backstory for your Shepard, so you can be you could have grown up as a traveling spacer, or a colonist whose homeworld was attacked by Batarians, or a ruthless commander that was that led a doomed mission but was the only survivor. There's You can sort of choose your backstory from a couple of different options, which do get mentioned in dialogue in this game. Mass Effect is great at remembering everything that you've said and done in previous games. But you're on a ship called the Normandy, and you're being observed by a Spectre named Nihilus. And Spectres are like the giant council of aliens that rule over the space station Citadel. Spectres are their special operatives that are able to go around and do covert ops missions, or they have a lot of diplomatic and military freedom to act around in the galaxy at the council's behest. But there's never been a human Spectre, because humans are not really trusted by the more established alien races that have been at the Citadel for decades or centuries before the humans arrived. And again, the humans arrived at the Citadel only 20 or 30 years earlier. They had a war with the race called the Turians, which your teammate Garrus is a Turian, and three races in particular, Asari, Turians, and Solarians, are sort of the main council of the Citadel, and humans are trying to become the fourth race to have a seat on the council. But they're being rebuffed because humans are considered entitled and moving too quickly by the other alien races, which perhaps fairly. But anyway, so you're being observed by a Spectre because Shepard is being considered to be the first human Spectre. Like you're basically under observation for this mission, and the mission goes horribly. Nihilus, who actually seems like a decent bloke, poor R.I.P. Nihilus, gets murdered by another Spectre named Saren, which is unusual because both Saren and Nihilus are Turians, and you Shepard, along with two of your crewmates, Caden and Ashley, who are both human, like see this happen, and you touch a device called a Prothean beacon. And the Protheans were the alien race that thousands of years earlier built the Citadel space station, and a lot of and Prothean technology is always being discovered and implemented by all of the alien races. They were again, it's a precursor legacy thing. There are too many sci-fi stories where you find ancient technology by a super advanced now deceased civilization. They do that a little too often. But in Mass Effect, it's called the Protheans. So when you go back to the Citadel and report Saren's actions, they don't believe you because Saren is a trusted Spectre. And the first sort of the first free mission, or at least free roaming you get to do in the game, is explore the Citadel, learn everything about all the aliens around, trying to expose Saren's wrongdoings. And Jono, I have to ask you that because the Citadel, I think, has become an iconic metropolitan area of video games. Like what did you think of it?
I was really impressed with the way they did the Citadel. Actually, it felt genuinely like a almost a community of people, even with the somewhat limited number of locales. Like it felt very expansive. And then you go underground, and all of a sudden it opens up even more. There was just so much to do. It felt a little overwhelming at first. But like most really good locations in RPGs, after you get to know it, you actually start feeling kind of at home there. And you could really start to, you can feel your way around. I think one of the smartest things that they did, not that everyone would do this, but for me anyway, is the Keeper side quest, where you have to go around and very quietly scan the Keepers. I thought that was actually a really interesting method to get the player to explore pretty much the entire Citadel. I mean, it's a pain in the butt to do, but it did get me into corners that I otherwise probably wouldn't have gone.
I mean, that's classic incentive technique. It's like by offering a reward, people will do their own work rather than will be compelled to do that kind of work instead of just telling them to do it. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of nooks and crannies in the Citadel, and your early missions in there have you you meet Tali because she's again a Quarian who was a people without a home planet because it was overrun by their former AI slaves called the Geth, and now they are continuously at war with the Geth. So she's a Quarian on her pilgrimage to explore the rest of the galaxy before returning to her fleet. She stumbles across a very nasty deal between Saren and a local crime lord. Garrus is a Turian police officer with a group called CSEC, or Citadel Security, who's trying to take down that crime lord. And Rex is a mercenary who is like after a bounty on that crime lord. So like that's how you meet all three of them back to back to back. and they sort of become your crew, and decide to stick with you after seeing you in action, shutting down this, just taking care of a lot of business on the Citadel in search of data to incriminate Saren. But Wes, what's something around the Citadel that you either remember fondly or like about this part of the game?
The fact that the game really does pull you around everywhere, and like every place you go, there's something to do. You're recruiting new party members, you're learning about new alien races, you're picking up quests, you're chatting with a overly enthusiastic fan. Like the Citadel is big and packed. And it encourages you to go explore every single bit of it. And I mean, on replays, that can make it feel like, okay, I've done the Citadel a lot of times and this is very front loaded. But even then, it still gives you that feeling of like, you're really getting into the world on the Citadel. Like this is giving you a good feeling for the world as it's supposed to be operating before things hit the fan.
Yeah, it's very shiny with sort of blue ceiling spaces and white buildings. It's a very pristine feeling building, which makes the end of Mass Effect 1 even like seem like a bit of a shocker. But it's a cool giant space station, and but at the end of this first Citadel experience, you are made into the first human Spectre. Saren is blacklisted, and your mission becomes investigate these couple of things that are related to the Protheans or Saren. And that's sort of the big midpoint. Well, not the midpoint, but like the sort of the middle third of Mass Effect 1 is doing these story-driven quests in any order, and also exploring the Citadel and exploring the galaxy, doing dirty work as a Spectre. And wait, Jono, I know you mentioned you were an infiltrator. Are you going for a Paragon or Renegade flavor this playthrough?
Pure Paragon. I always play as Paragon. I do like being the hero, but also I just have trouble choosing the wrong thing to. I play as myself. Not that I think I'm a hero, but like I play as myself in terms of my choices, and I just seem to be too nice a person to be a renegade. Whenever I choose renegade, I always feel bad about it.
There were definitely a couple of choices that we'll talk about that I felt real bad hitting the renegade button for.
There's a renegade option, or just a sad option, that when I did a renegade playthrough, because this is my third time playing Mass Effect 1. I did a renegade and a Paragon run many years ago, but I never finished the renegade runs of Mass Effect 2 and 3. So I'm going to be doing a full playthrough for the second time, but this is technically my third of Mass Effect 1. Or a full trilogy playthrough for the second time. But yeah, I think part of why I was less comfortable with this is because I love the alien races in Mass Effect 1. I like having. I think that Kaidan and Ashley are the two most boring teammates by far.
Oh God, Kaidan is boring.
Kaidan sucks.
Yeah.
Kaidan
sucks. Kaidan's a boring elemental.
I romanced Liara specifically because the other option was Kaidan as a female shepherd.
Like he really comes on to you hard too, like in your conversation.
Yeah.
And it's
it's the closest he has to a personality trait.
Like, where do you get off, dude?
He's a little thirsty, and also we were talking about the romance options being a little bit limited in this game, and that's not a problem. First of all, this is when BioWare was really trying to figure out how to properly portray characters of different sexuality. They got better at it with subsequent games, but it's a little bit too limited in Mass Effect 1. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Dragon Age 2, where all four of the main romance options are bisexual. And if you're accidentally too nice with them, you can get locked into a sex route, which is even if you were trying to avoid that. So those are opposites of the spectrum. By Mass Effect 3, they have it pretty well figured out. Several options. Some are straight, some are gay, some are bi, and they come in many different shapes and sizes. And a couple of them can even romance each other if you're romancing neither of them. So that's Mass Effect 3 does a good job about it. They had not really figured it out in Mass Effect 1 yet.
No, they haven't.
But I love the different silhouettes and the diversity of your team so much that I am almost always wanting to go the path of cooperation in Mass Effect, which made being a renegade where you're like very pro-human and somewhat racist against aliens made that a little hard. I like the Paragon path more than the renegade path for sure in Mass Effect.
Also, it strikes me as a little bit weird. I mean, most of your crew in like all three games are aliens. And it just seems to me like, why would they be with you if you are really racist?
I mean, I don't have a good answer for that. I guess because you're the shepherd and this is your favorite shop on Citadel.
It seems like your best friend would just be Ashley, the other canonical space racist on your ship.
See, that's the funny thing. I don't love the character of Ashley Williams, But the fact that she does have xenophobic tendencies and is kind of racist and is very reactionary and conservative in all three games, to me is very interesting. Like, she's not my favorite character, but she really does something, and she is memorable
Yes.
in that sense. Whereas Caden is just a block of horny wood.
Yeah, she's got a lot more going on.
Yeah, and actually, she comes from a long-standing military family. If you go into her dialogue trees deeply, you learn that her grandfather was a disgraced general that was a bit of a pariah in the Turian Wars, which probably fuels part of why she doesn't trust aliens, but is also somewhat, she identifies herself as a military brat. Like, she has some interesting angles to her, and for a character that is deliberately unpleasant sometimes. I think they handle like the good and bad parts of her well. Unlike Caden, who is just boring and horny, and his big story twist is that he gets migraines. Like, thanks, buddy. Yeah, great job.
I do admit I am curious how Caden would have developed throughout. Well, briefly in Mass Effect 2, but his as a secondary character in Mass Effect 3. I'm curious, is the Mass Effect 3 version of him would be more interesting and fleshed out? But to be frank, he didn't make it that far in my playthrough.
The
a
same
little
is,
bit, but not.
The same is true for me. And when I played Mass Effect 3 in 2012, Caden was also unavailable then. So we'll see how. I guess we're not gonna have a lot of Caden later this month.
I love the fact that choice at the end of the game happened, and it's like you have to choose one. I actually am on my way. Sorry, Caden. I know it was supposed to be like this big moral moment where you're like, oh, which one of these two squad members do I choose? And nope.
It's not discount Karth.
Nope. Nope.
Karth.
Yep. No, I was going for what's the joke? Space Karen?
No, that's not bad. Space Karen. But let's talk about the other teammates we haven't really discussed as much yet. There's Rex, who's a very gruff Krogan mercenary, delightfully so, in fact. But the Krogans, I thought, are maybe one of the best sub storylines in all of the Mass Effect trilogy. They were a race that is very hardy and breeds very quickly and are very powerful and warlike. But there was there was a devastating war against the Krogans, but then they were somewhat calmed down and kept to their home worlds for a while. But then when a giant threat of space alien spiders called the Arachni threatened Citadel space, the Krogans were recruited as mercenaries again. But then there was a second Krogan conflict, even worse than the first, because Krogans were allowed to grow out of control again. So following that second Krogan war, Solarian scientists basically put in a gene-bound plague called a genophage into Krogan DNA. So now around only 1 in 1,000 Krogan children survive childbirth or something crazy, and the species is almost sterile but not extinct. And Rex feels extremely wronged by those events as a veteran of some of the Krogan wars. He mentioned how because they don't have wars to fight off planet, Krogans on their home planets mostly just fight each other and aren't interested in building a better tomorrow. He even murdered his father, who was a Krogan chieftain, because he was too short-sighted in that way. So Rex is jaded, mad about the Krogan situation, interested in anything that could possibly stop the genophage, because he's one of the most intelligent and forward-thinking Krogans, and even then is still like the gruffest and meanest guy on your team. And then you have on the other hand, Liara, who is, and the Asari. If the Krogans were designed to be a warlike alien race, the Asari were designed to be a sexy alien race. I mean, let's be real. They can mate with men or women because they download data psychically and make mental connections while both partners are aroused to impregnate themselves. They are all female and psychically influence people looking at them to appear attractive to all races, so they can have as much diverse DNA as possible in the Asari gene pool. Again, and they I think they're blue, and their heads are sort of anemone like in how they flow back without really having hair exactly. But yeah, Krogans are war aliens, Asari are sex aliens, and Liara, your Asari teammate, is your only is your bisexual romance option.
I mean, technically not. I mean, not to get into this, but apparently, from what I have read, and actually interestingly, they get a little bit into this in Andromeda. They are a monogendered species. There is no male and female. The
Yes,
vast majority of them present
correct.
female. But you're right. Like they're just kind of the idea of male female sex doesn't really occur to them.
They are unisex, but they are female presenting to a human like me.
They are attractive to both male and females.
And part of that is because they psychically influence their partners and their surroundings, and they're just a very biotically powerful species, which is why Liara is your sort of main biotics user on the team.
Yep. Also, I forgot something I wanted to mention. We talked about it earlier, but I wanted to mention it again. Something else that I love about the alien species and various members of your team, for example, are that they live very, very different lengths of time. Like the Asari and the Krogan live upwards of like over 1,000 years in their lives. Solarians only live like, what is it, 40? And
the Solarian that joins your team in Mass Effect 2 is 35 and is considered elderly.
Yeah, and Turians live about the same length of time as humans, maybe a little bit longer. So all of the species have very different ways of looking at the galaxy because they have very different ways of basically looking at time and the way that the spans of time that exist in the universe. So I just really like that. And like Asari, like Liara is over 100 years old, but she acts like she's maybe in her late 20s, early 30s, because in her life cycle, that's sort of where she is.
No, she's considered barely an adult. So
Yes.
so she's probably in human years she would probably be in the 18 to 21 range.
Yeah, she has real grad student energy about her.
Absolutely.
Yes, she does. Yes, because she's a Prothean researcher. She doesn't join you on the Citadel with the other aliens on your team. One of the early missions is to try and locate her because her mother Benezia is one of is sort of Saren's second in command. And Liara's knowledge of Prothean artifacts, like the beacon you found, and connection to Benezia could be useful to you. So it's generally, I would always recommend new players do that mission first, because then you'll get your final teammate, which is good. The other options that you have for your early missions are going to the planet Therum, which is under a Geth attack. Geth are the robot species, or I should say the AI species. Saren seems to have recruited a bunch of them, and they're attacking a planet called Pharos, which is hiding a dark secret underneath its city space. And let's stay in Theros in Therum for a second. Pharos is different. In Therum, you do the wait, no. I'm mixing up. Therum is where you find Liara, and Pharos is where the Geth attack is happening. And so you basically infiltrate this the Geth occupied portion of Pharos and discover that that a corporation that was based there was doing hydroponics research on an ancient millennia-old plant species called the Thorian. And that village that you started out in is full of humans with Thorian that are being psychically manipulated by Thorian spores. So after you discover what's going on in Pharos, you can decide to kill all of the colonists to stop the Thorian, or you can develop a sort of a sleep bomb, like counter or antidote to free everyone of the Thorian's influence. So and also, like, the Thorian ends up spitting out an Asari disciple of Benezia's that and you can choose to have her live or die, and if you choose to have her live, she will show up in Mass Effect 2 and 3. So thoughts on the Pharos and the Thorian? Like, is there a Star Trek episode of an ancient plant species that is controlling everyone with spores? Because it sounded like it could have been an old Star Trek episode to me.
I mean, there's an episode where there's a giant amoeba. There are episodes with little amoeba. It pulls quite a bit from kind of basic science fiction tropes, but it really works and is really creepy. Like the cloned Asari, the green one that that is spit out at you continuously. You just keep killing her over and over again in the final battle in this place. It's a great fight.
Yeah, like the Thorian is cloning her and using her to communicate with you, but you do end up like releasing the real Asari at the end. I forget her name, but she even like if you're very, very kind to her and let her survive, she expresses a romantic interest in you in one of the sequels. I forget which, but
in 2.
Yeah, but this time around I was being a racist bastard shepherd, so I shot her in the head. See ya.
Yep, me too.
Oh, jeez, I feel.
Oh,
I,
Jono, you big softy. You let
I
her
am
live.
I'm such a big softy. I'm assuming that you also both killed the colonists.
I definitely did because again playing very very harsh renegade this run.
I couldn't bring myself to be that harsh. I've never been able to do it, and I now doubt if I ever will. So I guessed most of them.
I mean, there's a difference between being. I don't feel like renegade means complete sociopath
Although if you
necessarily.
pick all renegade options, you kind of do end up pretty sociopath.
Both are correct, but I am also intentionally being a sociopath.
Okay. See,
Yeah.
I like being a paragon, and I occasionally like throwing in a renegade option just if I'm feeling like, well, angry or like I want to punch a reporter, for example.
It's harder on a future playthrough too, because I know how all of these effects impact later on, and I know so many of these renegade options I'm picking are going to hurt me in the future. So many of them are the worst long-term options.
Yeah, I feel that too. And I am acting as a renegade with keeping in mind knowing how some of the end game scenarios can go. So I might even make adjustments to my choices in Mass Effect 2 to favor myself, to favor, to make me a little bit stronger in Mass Effect 3. But I am trying to be renegade, and even when I'm accidentally Paragon, it's like well, whatever. I'm basically playing a mean character now, and I care more about being consistent to my idea of the character than nailing every renegade option. But I'm still nailing most of the renegade options. I'm not gonna. I am deliberately pressing the red button more than the blue button. But the third sort of major pillar to the main part of the game is Noveria, which you can only do after you recruit Liara. That's where her mom Benezia is stationed.
Played by a Star Trek alumni, Marina Sirtis, the voice actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's Deanna Troy.
Oh, cool.
And also Demona from Gargoyles.
Oh, more gargoyles references. This is going to be, maybe we should do a gargoyles episode in 2023.
Yeah, it's going to keep happening.
I'd be down for that.
Where were we? We were in Noveria. Like, you do some fun corporate espionage before that happens, because Noveria is completely run by corporations. It lends out lab space and is a bit of a business resort. So you can go you can you help a like an intergalactic Citadel Interpol agent shut down the corrupt leader of Noveria to get and all just to get a permission to investigate Benezia's lab that's out in the mountains somewhere. And I think this is not the first time it happens in the game, but this is one of the extended Mako sequences, and we have not said that four-letter word this time in this podcast. The Mako is your little land boat tank thing that you use to explore the surface of planets. And a lot of the optional content in Mass Effect is exploring the empty surfaces of a new planet and righting wrongs and making discoveries on it. I don't know. Sometimes, like, the falling with style of the Mako can get a little bit frustrating. I wish the game had less Mako in it, but it is a little nostalgic driving around on that awkward six-wheeler, eight-wheeler.
Yeah, this is the first playthrough I got so frustrated I had to just stop doing Mako stuff for a little while, because it even controls way better in this than it did in the original version.
It was better than I remembered it, and I still hated it a little bit.
Still,
I didn't hate it. It was the kind of thing. Maybe it's just because I was playing the Legendary Edition for the first time, and I don't have like nightmarish memories of dealing with it from the original game. But it didn't seem as bad as people said, so it didn't really bother me. That being said, I mean, the worlds were bare. They're not procedurally. They felt very procedurally generated, even though I suspect they were hand done at that time. But there just wasn't enough there. The worlds were too big, too much driving around for no real payoff. But I didn't have a bad time with the Mako.
Yeah, there's something meditative about like driving around on a desert planet and looking for artifacts or crash ships and looting them. There's fun to it, but
it was podcast time for me, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. There is something sort of meditative about driving it around, but I still think the planet surfaces were too vast and the Mako controls were too clumsy, and it's a little bit too easy to die in the Mako if you run into one of those giant sandworm things.
The Thresher Maws.
Yeah, so it's I wish there was less Mako, but I don't totally hate it. And the other, I guess, meme-worthy gameplay mechanic from 2007 that's improved in the intervening 15 years are the elevators in the Citadel.
Big difference.
But, there was so much loading and engineering challenges to having Mass Effect 1 run well in the 360 in 2007 that they made elevator loading times very, very long, and gave you a lot of intercharacter dialogue or like PA system dialogue happening while you're on the elevator. And but for this one, like the dialogue is still there, the PA stuff is still there. You even learn about some side quests from just regular Citadel announcements that you can investigate later. But it's not nearly the load times are not nearly as long or clumsy this time around. But again, that's what 15 years and superior hardware will do. Back to Novaria, you eventually confront Benezia in this lab. You have to solve some puzzles, and she eventually she reveals that Saren has some kind of mind control ability that is able to influence anyone around him, and that's part of that's part of why he's gotten followers so quickly, and is even more dangerous than you suspected. But she dies in her like last few moments of lucidity, and and also that the station where she was running experiments is overrun with Rachni, those spider aliens that I mentioned from the Krogan conflict a little while ago. And at the end of the lab, you find a tube containing a Rachni queen who was hatched from an egg and then bred into these other Rachni. And you're able to communicate with the Rachni queen with the help of some Asari. And another one of the big decision points in this game, along sort of similar to the Thorian stuff, you can choose to kill off this final Rachni and make this species go extinct for good, or set it free into space where it can possibly help you later, or possibly create a new Rachni threat. So I gotta ask, this is pretty clear. Paragon, pity the Rachni. Renegade, kill the Rachni. Did you kill the Rachni queen or set her free?
Well, I set her free because I'm a paragon.
I killed her and it hurt me emotionally. That is not a pleasant scene.
I killed her as well. It is she begs for her life. She says it's okay to kill her children that they've made in this lab because they aren't true Rachni, that she hasn't been able to properly acclimate. So they make you feel okay about killing the Rachni that are attacking you in the base, which I guess is appreciated. But it does hurt killing this suffering final member of her own species. But I killed her this time. I knew I was going to kill her going in, and I pressed the button.
Here comes Sollosi Shepard making the hard choices.
Yep. Well, they're hard for Michael Sollosi. Quite easy for Sollosi Shepard. Sollosi Shepard's a jerk.
So I'm not gonna lie. This is the point where I had to like make the hard decision. Where like, okay, is this actually a Renegade run? I've gone purely Renegade up to this point, but this is what I can't return from.
I had one decision that was much harder. There was one really hard decision for me in this game, and that we're going to talk about it in just a minute. Because after you take care of Pharos and Novaria, you're able to have enough clues from the Prothean artifacts that you find and from the information from Benezia that Saren has a base on planet Vermeer. And Vermeer is sort of where the end game of the game begins. You can still do side quests at this point, but Vermeer is a big deal because it's a special infiltration mission with a Solarian military officer named Kirahi. And so you and this team of Solarians got to Mako into the planet and sneak past all of Saren's defenses and attack his some kind of weapons laboratory that he has going on there. And at around midway through the Vermeer mission, you learn that one of the projects they're working on in Vermeer is a cure to the Krogan genophage. And your orders are to destroy everything there, but Rex pulls a gun on you and says basically, hold up a minute. If there's information or data here that can help cure the genophage, then we need to salvage it. And the thing about this decision is if you have a very high Paragon persuade rating, then you can talk him down, and Rex will agree that if you're able to cure it, then it can still be cured in the future. Or if you have a very high Renegade score, you can persuade Rex via intimidation that to stand down, because again, Rex respects your strength and prowess. But if you're me, you're going to deliberately fail both of those persuasion checks and shoot Rex in the head.
Oh no!
Oh no!
In both of my runs 10 years ago or so, I again, one Paragon, one Renegade. I let Rex survive because I like him too much. But this time, I'm like, I've never tried Mass Effect 2 with no Rex in it, because Rex features prominently in Mass Effect 2 and 3 if he survives the events of 1. but I'm trying the other path now. I am going the road less traveled by, and I'm going to see what happens with Rex's brother in charge of the Krogans in Mass Effect 2 instead of Rex himself. But it felt bad because yeah, I like Rex. I didn't want to. It was I felt like the kid in Old Yeller. I didn't want to do it, but I did it.
Oh, you shot him. You could have just let Ashley do it because, it's Ashley.
No, I felt like I had to do the shot myself. It was like, the way I'm playing this Shepherd. They take care of things in their own hands. So I shot Rex. Didn't feel good though.
Nope.
But after Rex dies and you go to the end of the facility, you run into some people that were there against their will, but they all of them mention that Saren and his ship are able to create a weird influence over people, and the part of the reason they were researching the Thorian were to try to see what other forms of mind control are possible for Rex to expand, for Saren to expand his power. But you're eventually confronted by not exact. Well, you do fight Saren, and you're confronted by him, but you also are directly in communication with Saren's ship because his weird squid-looking ship is a sentient being on its own. And by using its unusual mind control abilities, is able to dominate the minds of anyone that stays in any organic being that stays in its vicinity long enough. And the Geth, who are an AI species, view Sovereign as a god because it's such a highly evolved inorganic life form. And those ships, called Reapers, were the apocalypse that wiped out the Protheans thousands of years earlier. And so, the way Sovereign describes it is that every several thousand years, they harvest or wipe out all organic life in the galaxy and then retreat back into dark space, let civilization grow again, let them discover the ancient artifacts that we thought were Prothean all this time, but really were Reaper artifacts. And once civilization thrives to a certain level, the Reapers come back and wipe out civilization again. And this has happened an indeterminate number of times, possibly millions or billions of years. So the game, like Mass Effect, goes from we need to stop Saren and whatever he's doing to we need to stop the next apocalyptic robot ship event. And but the problem is, going back to the Citadel, no one believes this credible Reaper threat. And but you do know where Saren's next destination is. It's a planet called Ilos, and Ilos is sort of where the end game of Mass Effect 1 really begins. But before we go to Ilos, there's a lot of freedom that you have to do side quests in the middle of all this stuff. Basically, once you leave the Citadel for the first time, there's an unbelievable amount of things available to you. What were some of your favorite or most memorable side quests that we did around the galaxy? I have a specific answer, but let's have one of you go first.
For me, it's the Cerberus side quest. I like the fact that, first off, humanity is not all on the same page. There are different factions out there who have different beliefs about humanity and if humanity should basically dominate the galaxy. So they're kind of human supremacists, and they have resources, and there's an entire quest chain that happens, which is not amazing, but it does set up something that is a massive payoff in Mass Effect 2, which is, I mean, if anyone's listening to this, they probably know what happens. I'm just going to say it. You join Cerberus in the second, reluctantly, but you're a member of Cerberus. So by doing this quest chain, it really gives you some background into the kind of horrible, morally gray experiments and things that this organization is doing, which makes all of the choices that you make in Mass Effect 2 inherently more interesting and difficult. So I like what that did. I like that setup.
There are several Cerberus side quests. Like you clash with the clandestine organization that's pro-human and anti-alien, Cerberus, many times, but there's one sort of big one where you uncover a big a conspiracy from and it ends up with the death of a human admiral that works at the Citadel, which is too bad because he seemed like a nice fella. But but Cerberus being like a minor antagonist in Mass Effect 1 to incredibly crucial to the story of Mass Effect 2 is pretty interesting. And going back, there was more Cerberus quests than I remember from my previous Mass Effect runs. Like I think I did more side quests in general this time around, but I was surprised at, like, I remember Cerberus feeling like they came out of nowhere when I first played Mass Effect 2. But no, if you do a lot of side quests in Mass Effect 1, they plant the seeds for you.
Yeah, my favorite side quest, DLC notwithstanding, maybe we can talk about that in a minute, might be it's also tangentially Cerberus related, because there's a mission that you get on Earth's moon rather, where there's this rogue VI acting out and doing just weird things, and you go and find out, this thing seems more sentient, closer to an AI than a VI, which is like a big running through line about the dangers of AI throughout the entire series, which is one of my favorite little through lines, because it's all about emerging sentience and, does that life count as sentient life? Does it deserve the same kind of respect given to all other sentient life as much as they try to? But that one really sticks out to me, not just because it touches on that, but because the rogue VI that you deal with actually has a connection that might not be super easily caught to a major character in Mass Effect 2 and 3 that I might just save for the next podcast.
Does their name start with L?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm intrigued then. But and we should mention VI is virtual intelligence. Because the world of Mass Effect is very concerned with AI, as Wes mentioned, with the Quarian and Geth conflict, with this, basically an AI hive mind state going rogue and becoming a major threat is the worst case scenario for AI that most of the Citadel species aliens are trying to avoid. And I should mention, there are several great side quests here. I think Wes surmised that I was going to bring up the Bring Down the Sky mission, which is the DLC for the original Mass Effect. It came out in 2008, 1 year after Mass Effect 1 was out in the wild. It's really good. You have to take down a bunch of multiple bases on an asteroid but before it crashes into a largely populated planet. So there's Mako sequences where you shut down the defenses, then you infiltrate multiple bases, and if it ends up with a showdown at a large base where you can choose to attempt to save or hostages or allow their deaths, and you can choose to spare the Batarian warlord that's running the show or kill him. The rewards you get are really good. You basically get top of the line armor as a reward, depending on your preference, medium, light, or heavy. And it was just very involved and had a lot of great dialogue and some decision making at the end, which is I think what makes a great BioWare side quest. But it was DLC in the original Mass Effect and is now but is baked into Legendary Edition.
It's one of those things that it actually got a mixed reception when it first came out, and I think it's purely a value ratio thing where it was more expensive than people thought it was worth. But once you take that out of the equation in this Legendary Edition, where it's just part of the game, it's just a side quest that lives in that game, I think it becomes unabashedly amazing. It deals with gray areas that the rest of the first Mass Effect game just doesn't, for the most part.
I was at university in 2008, so I have more expendable income now than I did then. But do you remember how much it cost back then?
Not off the top of my head, no. That was some time ago.
I feel like if it was less than $10, I would have felt great about it, because it does give you a couple hours and is one of the best optional contents in the game. But if they had gone 20 or higher, I probably would have been upset by that value judgment.
Yeah, there's no way it was under 10.
Yeah, I bet it was 15 or 20, but if it was somehow 25 or 30, now I feel outraged 15 years in the future. But yeah, Bring Down the Sky is great. And I'm going to zoom back to something we talked about almost an hour ago now. We didn't mention all the alien races in the game.
Oh, I got it.
What was it?
Bring Down the Sky was originally released for 400 Microsoft points.
Oh, so that's $5. What are you talking about?
Never mind. Yeah, $5. That's all it cost.
That's great.
And actually, it was free on the PC if you bought it.
Huh.
Yeah, that's actually a good price point. Like, I don't know why there were complaints, because it's a really solid piece of DLC.
Pinnacle Station was the second DLC, and that was $5.
Okay, was that the one that was lost to time for a while? And
yeah, it still is.
Okay,
it's actually not in there, but it's like Arena DLC basically, so no one cried about its loss.
yeah, right. I remember reading about that, but I again, no one made a big deal about it, so I didn't. It didn't bother me. But I want to go back a little bit to one of the alien races we didn't discuss yet, just because I find them so charming. The Elcor, who yes. They express emotion through very, very nuanced movements and by application of different scents and pheromones. So they're not used to things like facial expressions or in different intonation in voice. So every time you speak to an Elcor, they say their emotional adjective before before speaking, something like delight, it is nice to meet you, human, or puzzled, what are you talking about, human? Like it's but they do that with a much higher level of sophistication than my example just then, and I just love them.
And it's brought to its best conclusion in Mass Effect 3, where they have an Elcor movie star who just prefixes everything with badassedly, which might be my favorite little bit of writing in the whole thing.
Speaking of movie stars, there's another alien species, the Hanar, which are somewhat impressionable, somewhat dim-witted, jellyfish-like people, and they use unusual English, referring to them to all any pronoun as this one or that one. And there's a James Bond like series of movies in the Mass Effect universe called Blasto, the First Hanar Spectre, which is basically like a secret agent version of a Hanar. And that I'm not doing it justice with this description now, but it is hilarious whenever you can hear a trailer of one of the Blasto movies in Mass Effect 2 or 3, because it's funny, and this is also the exact era of way too much lore in codex sections and way too many audio clues or audio diaries that you find throughout missions.
If you're listening to this, do yourself a favor and go online and type in like Blasto movie posters. They're great.
They're phenomenal.
Mass Effect 5 should just be a Blasto game. Like who would not be into Mass Effect Blasto?
I think there was a PlayStation game called Blasto.
Maybe there. I mean, that makes me think of Blaster Master for the NES, but that's different.
I think it was an early platformer for the PlayStation. Unrelated.
A Blasto game sounds like a great time, but that is not quite here nor there. Let's go into the end game of Mass Effect 1. You go to a planet called Ilos. It has another Prothean beacon. You meet an ancient Prothean AI that was like basically containing the last vestiges of the Prothean race. But all of them, but none of them were able to survive to the present day. But they do basically the device on Ilos that Saren has been looking for this entire game is an automatic teleportation backdoor into the Citadel, and is intended to be used as a relay point to teleport hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of Reapers into the middle of Citadel space to begin their purge of all organic life in the galaxy. So what you need to avoid doing now, or what you need to do is right when you meet this AI and get to the end of Ilos, Saren has teleported Sovereign and his Geth army into the middle of the Citadel, and they immediately begin wreaking havoc. So what you have to do is follow them and defeat them before Sovereign takes over the main conduit of the Citadel and summons all the Reapers from deep space instantly into the middle of Citadel space. And to do that, it's again the final missions or the final mission is at a burning, falling apart version of the Citadel, where you confront Saren. You can either fight him directly or skip part of the fighting with a renegade or paragon intimidation / persuasion check, and eventually fight a like weird, creepy RoboCop, half Sovereign, half Saren as the game's final boss. But before doing that, you have to before you go to Ilos, you have to sneak around and like use some chicanery to get out of the Citadel. And then you sneak back in with very similar chicanery. You position a fleet of humanity's warships to try and take back the Citadel from all the Geth and Sovereign. And then you have your second to last decision to make is you can the giant flagship that's carrying the main council of aliens that run the Citadel is making an escape, and you can choose to order the human fleet to rescue them, or to wait until you have a better shot at Sovereign and let the council ship die to weaken all the Geth. And that's extremely obviously Paragon is to save the aliens, Renegade is to kill the aliens. But can I assume that both of you went the traditional Paragon Renegade routes?
Yeah, I went Paragon.
Sure did. That sucker blew up.
It sure did for me too, because I guess my Shepard would have been best friends with Ashley's grandfather.
My favorite thing is being able to just harass them throughout the entire game, where every time you call in for a report, you hang up on them almost immediately.
You can be really rude to each other in the dialogue in this game. It's awesome.
I once let them get just a little bit farther, and they talked about how not funny it is that I keep hanging up on them. I was like, oh, it's pretty funny, and then I hung up on them.
I used neutral language a lot during the briefings before and after missions, because the really mean answers just straight up lead you bullying Liara, and I did not like that at all. I wanted to,
I couldn't do that.
I didn't like being so mean to Liara, so I answered her neutrally a lot of the time, and then was super renegade in other parts of the game.
Yeah, the renegade things I can't do are the ones that are like, just be a jerk to your teammates. It's like, no.
And you know what? We skipped over this. Caden is so forgettable that we completely forgot about the end of Vermeer, where only either Caden or Ashley survives, and you have to choose which one lives and which one dies.
Wait. Caden can survive? What?
You wouldn't believe it.
Wouldn't,
right?
I had no idea.
Who would have thunk it? But R.I.P. Caden.
In all instances here, I think.
Correct. Yeah, there isn't really a renegade or paragon decision here, because you have to choose which one you want to survive.
I mean, let's be honest. There's not really a decision here, really.
I would have rather killed both of them and keep Rex, but sadly, that's not an option.
If I was in a room with Caden and Ashley and a gun with 2 bullets, I'd shoot Caden twice.
Yeah, you can lose a lot of team members on that mission.
Yeah, you can lose a third of your team straight
your
up.
Squad, yeah,
that's wild.
And that's not the only Mass Effect game where a lot of your squad can die. But we're not talking about future games yet.
We're not there yet.
But we are at the end of at the end of this podcast episode, roughly. You save the day, whether the council ship makes it or not, and then you get to choose whether the conniving Ambassador Udina or your best friend Keith David himself, Captain Anderson, becomes the first human member of the Citadel Council. So like basically your heroism definitely lifts humanity in the eyes of all the other alien races, and you become the 4th official council species, which is, I don't know, pretty rude to the L Corps, who definitely deserved a spot before the humans. Just saying. But I mean, all of us have played Mass Effect 2 before, so we at least know a little bit of what to expect. But what's one, without completely diving into spoilers, what's one Mass Effect 2 thing you're looking forward to discussing some weeks or months from now?
I think some of the connections that you don't really expect, that you can just blink and miss them in Mass Effect 2. There are dozens of callbacks to Mass Effect 1, and so many are big that you don't realize the small ones every time you go in, like the Rogue VI quest that I mentioned earlier that we'll get into next time.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page. I love the idea that inconsequential choices that you make actually have payoffs in future games in ways that you don't expect. To me, that makes the world feel very lived in. And I was very impressed with how they handled game connectivity, continuity between each one of the games, and that's going to be cool to talk about next episode.
Yeah, the Asari that was the thrall of the Thorian, and the fanboy that harasses you multiple times at the Citadel, and the reporter that's really rude to you at the Citadel, they all can come back in future games, and they aren't the only characters like that.
Oh, Conrad.
Poor Conrad Werner.
I'm assuming that Conrad Werner did not make it out of either one of your games alive.
I believe he survived, but I was extremely mean to him.
I'm not his hero anymore.
No, yes, correct. He's alive, but like maybe he'll turn into an Incredibles syndrome style supervillain in Mass Effect 3 that I had never experienced before. But we shall see.
Can I ask a question before we jump in? I'm just curious. What were your romance options? Like, who did you pick, if you picked?
I romanced Liara, and in the next game, I am not sure if I'm going to keep Liara hanging on or if I'm going to get me a lizard boyfriend. Oh, yeah.
I also went with Liara, and Borpo's a bit of a meathead. Yes, I named him Borpo. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. So he's going to be dating around, I think.
Okay.
I did Liara too, but I went into it because I knew it was going to continue. And I really wanted to have Shepard be like, well, first off, like a lesbian, like not bisexual at all, lesbian, but also really monogamous. And it really created a nice kind of through line throughout all the games, their relationship, which really worked well. Also, I was not I mean, I had absolutely no idea. I don't know how I missed it. I was not expecting the sex scene at all.
Yeah,
surprise.
It's like a little bit of a Showtime movie in which it's like they're not it's somewhat tasteful for being a sex scene in a 2007 video game.
It's softcore.
Yeah, it's softcore. They're not trying to hide. How do I put this? It is clearly sex. They're not being coy about it, but it's tasteful enough that it's probably PG-13. Probably.
I wouldn't say PG-13. I don't know. Well, maybe R.
There's enough hard F words and S words that probably make this an R-rated game. or maybe T for teen, or whatever choice they make. But yeah, they're part of the reason that there were some reports of salaciousness with Mass Effect coming out, were the alien sex scenes, including the ones with the with the alien madam that you can visit near the beginning of the game.
Yeah, my Shepard has a real thing for Asari.
Well, my Shepherd started out with a thing for Asari, but I think she might move on to either Turians or whatever the hell whatever the hell Thane is in Mass Effect 2.
Well, it's funny. It's not just that. Like, my Shepherd's not just gay, but she also has no interest in humans at all.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, my Shepherd is, I suppose, bisexual, but she's also exclusively romancing aliens. So I guess she's at odds with herself. Like she hates aliens and is pro-human, but is also having romantic liaisons with aliens. Anyway, yeah, that's the end of Mass Effect 1. All three of us were excited to play it. For Jono the first time, for Wes and I, not the first time. But this is a game that is held up after around 15 years post-release, and I'm really excited to get to Mass Effect 2. I have not started it yet, and again, we're this episode is being recorded a couple of months in advance. We're pacing ourselves so we don't overindulge in Mass Effect over 3 weeks or however long.
No, you're pacing yourself.
Some of us are.
I binged all 4 games in like a month and a half.
That's true. Yeah, I guess Jono played 4 games in enough time for me to play one of them. But I'm also playing a game a month for this podcast. So
very true.
So some of my gaming time is already spoken for. But I am really excited to get to Mass Effect 2 very soon. So listeners, if you can follow my social media around a little bit, like look around where I beat Mass Effect 1 and where I beat Mass Effect 2, and this recording was in between those. But we have been running for a while just because we love talking about Mass Effect, but I guess we're at the end of the episode. Listeners, if you want to reach out to us, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com. The past of Retro Encounter is some recent episodes on adventure games. We just had Adventure Games Month, but we haven't recorded those episodes yet at this time of recording, so I don't know how those went.
So anything can happen.
Anything can happen, and also we had one episode ago was episode 350, and I don't know how that went either. So, so listeners, you in the future are know more about Retro Encounter than I do months in the past. But coming soon, we are doing 2 more episodes on Mass Effect. One on Mass Effect 2 and 3, but we're not going to have revisited at the end of the title those times because we have not done those episodes on Retro Encounter before. But listeners, if you want to engage with RPG Fan in other ways, you can comment on our message boards, visit our Facebook page, our Twitter page, which is RPGFan.com, our Instagram, Discord, YouTube, Twitch, something going on all of those places roughly every day. There's also a relatively recent RPG Fan store that we opened up over the summer. Through TeePublic, you can buy RPG Fan merch, including shirts, coffee mugs, phone cases, and pins with probably more designs and more content being added to that store very gradually over the next several months or years. If you want to support RPG Fan, might I suggest buying some merch off the store. But RPG Fan does not only offer merch and websites. We also have 2 other fine podcasts: Random Encounter, hosted by you, Jono.
Hello.
And also Rhythm Encounter, hosted by you, Mike Salvato.
Hello.
That Mike's not here. I just wanted it to be symmetrical with the previous comment.
If I had a mic impression in there, I'd be there.
It's okay. I'll just go into like one of the episodes of Rhythm Encounter that I've edited and just like toss Mike in for a cameo.
Sure. Go for it. But anyway, both Random and Rhythm Encounters are every 2 weeks. Random Encounter mostly about current events and specific topics, and Rhythm Encounter mostly about RPG music. You can listen to Retro Encounter or those other 2 fine podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, whatever channel you choose. Please give us feedback. We love feedback. But if you want to give us feedback as individuals and not as a podcast, let's tell them how to do so, starting with you, Wes.
You can find me on Twitter at Wes Iliff. That's about it.
Now, Jono.
You can find me on Twitter at Jono_Logan. You can send me an email at jlogan@rpgfan.com, or if you have something for Random Encounter, you can send it to podcast@rpgfan.com.
And listeners, the easiest way to reach me is via Twitter. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times, and on RPG Fans Discord, I am Monsoon Mike. So we still have a galaxy to save. There's this looming Reaper threat. Cerberus, we're not sure if they're good guys or bad guys, but there's a lot to unpack next week with Mass Effect 2, but we're not going to record that episode for at least an extra month. Listeners, thank you. Good night and good luck.